watching Gearz, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better prices every day.
You know, a few weeks ago, we picked up an old, worn-out 1981 Z28 Camaro for $2,500. Now, of course, the car was partially disassembled and really beat up, but it was completely rust-free and had never been wrecked, so we jumped on it. And since that time, everybody that's been following us on our Shifting Gearz Facebook page has been dying to know what we're going to do with this thing. Because if I was to ask you to name the 3 most popular muscle cars of all time, there's a good chance a Camaro is going to be one of those 3. Released in 1967, the Camaro was Chevy's answer to the Mustang, and it was designed to give the Mustang a run for its money both in popularity and performance. But it wasn't until the second generation came out in 1970 that the Camaro truly became the icon that it is. So popular was the second generation Camaro that GM built it for 11 years with the Pontiac Firebird and Trans Am sharing the same basic body shell, meaning millions of these cars were built and thousands of them are still out there waiting to be brought back to life. Unfortunately, everybody wants the early 70s split bumper rally sport cars, and the price of those have skyrocketed out of sight. So what we're going to do with this old car is let you in on a few secrets about the second generation Camaros that'll make you think twice about spending big bucks for an original 70 through 73 Rally Sport. And that secret is GM didn't change this body shell at all through the 11-year run. Oh, they added different front ends and rear ends and T-tops and rear glass, but the basic body shell, that stayed the same. Which means there is an 11-year buffet of Camaro parts out there, both OEM and aftermarket, that will literally bolt onto any of these cars no matter what the year. So all you have to do is find the one that's set up the way you want, grab the appropriate catalog, and start building the car you want. That's what we're going to show you. Now, I started with an 81 Camaro because obviously it was cheap, and it is super solid. And I always liked the T-tops and the wraparound rear glass of the later years. So this is a perfect starting point. But I don't like the plastic nose and tail. So the rest of the car is going to be put together using different parts from different years to show you how easy it is for you to create the one-of-a-kind Camaro that you've always wanted. Come on. Okay, first things first. Anytime you pick up a new project vehicle, you need to go through it and see what you have, what needs to be replaced, what you're going to reuse, what needs to be thrown away, all of that kind of stuff. It's automotive archaeology at its best. And don't be surprised what you might find on an old cruiser like this. All right, let's check the trunk, see what we got back here. Ah, here you go, check it out. All right, once you've got everything cleaned up and organized, now you're ready to start building the car. And the first thing we're going to do to this car is get rid of that old nasty plastic nose and put an early split bumper front end on it. And for that, we went to Classic Industries because they've got a kit that will convert a standard 70 through 73 Camaro to a Rally Sport Camaro. Check it out. The kit starts out with new front sheet metal, both the lower valance panel and the upper header panel. And as you can see, these are stamped and welded together just like the original pieces. Then, of course, you have the urethane nose, you have the chrome trim that goes down inside of that, and then you have both grills that drop inside of that. Then, of course, you have the new hood latch, the brackets, the hardware, everything you're going to need to make this happen. Now, one of the cool things about the Rally Sport nose are the extra lights right here above the bumper. Well, of course, those come in the kit, and the most important piece are these little bumperettes that mount on either side of the nose and give the split bumper its personality. Now, it's important to remember that this is a kit to convert a 70 through 73 standard nose to a Rally Sport. If your car is later than that, 74 on up like ours is, you're going to need more than this to pull this conversion off. First of all, you're going to need some 70 through 73 front fenders. Now, these will bolt right on your car, but they're the only fender that's going to work with that nose. Then, of course, you're going to need all the brackets and hardware to mount the bumpers. Those bumperettes have got to bolt to something. Then you're going to need all the headlight hardware, the bezels, the buckets, the mounting brackets, the lights, the trim rings, the pigtails, the hardware, even the marker lights. All of this stuff is available at Classic Industries, and like I said, it's just like a big buffet. Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where we are in the process of taking this old beat-up 81 Camaro and slapping some early 70s mojo on it by converting that old plastic disco front end into the much more desirable split bumper front end from the early 70s. Now, the biggest surprise that people have about this project is that all that early sheet metal will actually bolt on to any second generation Camaro out there, making this a very simple way to build a very unique project. Now, as you can see, we've already got the hood off, and we've got the front end up on jack stands, so we got easier access to it, meaning this is something that anybody can do in their own garage. Now, we're ready to start getting rid of some of this old sheet metal. First to come off is the nose piece, and a few bolts is all that holds it to the core support. Once those are removed, you can lift it out of the way and set it aside. All right, now we're ready to unbolt the fenders. And this is just a matter of going around the perimeter of the fender and removing the bolts on top, on the bottom, and around the inner fender. Now, some of these are going to be stubborn, so penetrating lube is a must. Hopefully, you won't break any off, but don't be surprised if you do. Now, there's no need to remove or replace the inner fender if it's in good shape, because those remained unchanged throughout the whole run from 70 to 81. Now, obviously, if your original sheet metal's in good shape, you don't want to just toss it because they're valuable, and somebody's always looking for Camaro parts. So, we'll set them aside. All right, with the old sheet metal out of the way, I know you're going to be excited to fit some new parts on here. But before you just jump into it, take a few minutes here, clean everything up, and look things over for damage or rust on the inner fenders and the core support and the firewall and the frame and all that stuff. Because if you've got problems, now is the time to find them, and now is the time to fix them. Now, if it all checks out, you're ready to start fitting sheet metal. All right, finally, we are ready to fit the new fenders. And believe it or not, they are going to bolt right in place of the original fenders using the original hardware. Now, for now, we're just going to rough fit them in place and do the final fitting and tweaking and shimming once we have it all together. Now, a couple of other changes that Chevrolet made to the Camaro over the years to meet the requirements of that one-piece nose is add this big bumper brace and this hood latch, neither of which are going to work with our conversion. So now is the time to unbolt them and get rid of them. Now, make sure that you've got plenty of penetrating lube on hand and a very angry impact wrench, because bumper bolts are notorious for getting rusty and being really stubborn. Now we come to the big question that people have about this swap, the radiator core support. Do you have to replace it? Because if you're doing this on a running, driving car, there's a lot of people that don't want to pull out the radiator and whatever air conditioning condenser and lines you may have here and the wiring to replace the core support. But some people tell you you have to, some people tell you you don't. So what's the deal? Well, we've already shown you how you can modify the late core support to fit the early fenders, but you got to do more than that to fit the nose. For example, you're going to have to drill some holes to mount the headlight mounting bracket, and you're going to have to drill some holes to mount the Rally Sport bumper brackets. Also, you're going to need to trim these corners off to fit the earlier valence panel. So there's some tweaking that you're going to have to do, but it's doable. However, on the other hand, A brand new radiator support for a 70 through 73 Camaro is about 120 bucks from Classic Industries, and it's got all the right holes in the right shape to just bolt it in. Now that's the way I would suggest you go, but at least now you know you have some choices. Hey, welcome back to Gearz. If you're just getting here, we are right in the middle of one of the simplest nose jobs you will ever see on TV. The conversion of an 81 soft nose Camaro into a much more desirable 71 split bumper rally sport Camaro. Now, as far as surgery is concerned, this is pretty simple because everything you're going to need to do this is available right from Classic Industries. Now, as you can see, we've got new fenders and core support bolted on from a 70 through 73. Now the rest pretty much just bolts on. Check it out. The Rally Sport bumper brackets are the first to go on, and once again they just bolt onto the new core support using existing holes. Now there's several brackets and they all work together to add strength to the bumper and the nose. The new hood latch and center support are the next pieces to go on, and once those are in place, we'll fit the new header panel between the fenders. Now, one thing that I strongly suggest picking up as well is a front hardware kit, since the old 81 front end won't have all the hardware that you're going to need for this nose, and you probably wouldn't want to reuse it anyway. To prep the lower valance, the outer bumper bracket is bolted in place, and then the valance can be fitted to the car, along with the bumper filler pieces. Now, one thing to remember, with any replacement parts and sheet metal, be prepared to do some tweaking and filing of holes and bending of flanges to get it all to mate up right. Nothing is going to fit perfectly out of the box. The more time you spend pre-fitting everything, the better it's going to fit on the car when you're done. Once the sheet metal's fitting right, the urethane bumper is next, followed by the chrome surround, and finally the grille inserts. The lights are next, and that's as simple as bolting in the new Rally Sport turn signals, and then installing the new headlight brackets and buckets, followed by the bulbs and trim. The finishing touches are the bumpers and the marker lights. And all of a sudden, voila, you got the look of an early split bumper Camaro, at least in the front. Now, I know some of you are wondering, what about the hood? Well, obviously, Chevy never changed the hood. So you can reuse your original hood, you can get a cowl induction hood, you can go with a Baldwin Motion hood, you can get a carbon fiber hood. There's all kinds of options. And we're gonna show you some of those, and we're gonna deal with the tail end on another show. But at least now, you can see what a few $1,000s and the right catalog can do for an old Camaro. It's hard to believe this is the same car.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs. Born to burn.
You know, one of the biggest struggles that people have when they're buying a project vehicle is how do you know if it's actually been wrecked or not, in spite of what the seller may say? Well, the best advice is to look for clues and then read the metal. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you'll notice on this car here, on this core support, you see what looks like hammer marks. That's a very good indicator that some damage happened. So let's just go down here. You can see where something hit here and somebody hammered this back into shape. Now up here, once again, take a look. You see these splits? That's a great telling factor that some damage has happened there. If you'll notice on the other side, you don't have anything like that. Also, look at this. Because the metal got moved, somebody added an extra hood bumper. That's always an indicator. Now, we found where there's some damage. Now you have to read how extensive the damage was. So if you look at the fender, notice that's the original fender. I don't see any creases or damage here. If you follow it back, I don't see any damage in the inner fenders. You know, these are all factory pinches where it was shaped. And follow it all the way back, you notice there's no damage back in the firewall. You know, these are all factory folds where the fender was shaped. So what we've got is a little bit of damage that happened here. It didn't transfer back into the car, and somebody hammered it back and made it work. So we got something that's usable here. If you want to get rid of that, you just replace the core support. But at least you know the rest of the car is not damaged all the way back. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website.
Parts Bin, brought to you by AutomotiveTouchUp.com Touch-Up Paint. With a press of a button, you can restore your car's original paint.
One thing that is a fact of life if you own a car or truck is touch-up paint. Because it doesn't matter how careful you are, eventually you're going to get some nicks or scratches or dings in your paint. And fortunately, there is a company called Automotive Touch-Up that will help you fix those problems. Now, first of all, they start with a huge database of over 60,000 OEM colors, and they mix up a paint that's going to match your OEM color perfectly. Now, you can get that paint in the little bottles with a special applicator brush, or you can get it in aerosol cans with a special fine mist tip so you can get a professional application. Now, if your paint is a base coat clear coat, they also have the proper clear coat in the bottle and the aerosol can, and if the damage goes all the way to the metal, they also have primer in both the bottle and the can. Now, we all know that once in a while you have to do some body work when you have some paint damage. So they also carry body fillers, sanding blocks, sandpaper, everything that you're going to need, right down to the respirator to protect your lungs. Then once you have the application of the paint on right, they even have buffing compounds so you can cut and buff the paint and make it look like it's a professional job. If you want to cover a scratch, get some tape. If you want to truly fix it, you need to go to Automotive Touch-Up. It'll be like it never happened. You know, most people realize that the 88 to 98 GM trucks are a great project to pick up because they're cheap and they're easy to find. But if you've got a 4x4, they have one problem, that independent front suspension. It's just not tough enough to handle any kind of hardcore off-roading. Well, fortunately, Off-Road Designs has got a solid axle conversion kit to help that. Now, what it does is allow you to mount the leaf springs from the front of a 73 to 87 GM truck into your 90s GM truck. Now check this out. As you can see, the brackets are all heavy duty. They add 3 inches of lift and they'll move the front axle 1 inch forward to give you more room for those big meats that you're going to put on. Then of course you've got all the hardware, you have the urethane bushings, you've got the hangers, everything you're going to need to put those leaf springs under the front of that truck. Then you've got the foundation to put the axle of your choice, 10 bolt, Dana 44, Dana 60, whatever. The best part is those brackets are designed to bolt right to the stock frame once you get all that old junk out of the way. So if you want to turn your 90s truck into an off-road beast, you got to put a solid front axle under it. An Off-Road Design can help make that happen. It seems like everybody these days is consumed with size. Who has the biggest burger? Who has the biggest car? Who has the biggest reputation? Who has the biggest boots? And most of it is just ridiculous. But there is one area where size really does make a difference, and that is in the length of your ratchet handle. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever cranked on a stubborn bolt with a little stubby handle, you know something like this will wear you out. So you take some piece of pipe and you put it on there and try to give you more leverage. Stop doing that. Cornwell has come out with a real solution with a 3/8 inch drive ratchet with a 17-inch long handle. Look at that. This will give you the cranking power you need to break loose those rusty bolts without going to a 1/2 inch drive ratchet or a bigger breaker bar, making this the perfect tool to use in a small, tight area where these just aren't going to fit. So if you twist wrenches a lot, you know how important the leverage is that a handle like this can give you. It also answers the big question. Yes, Cornwell now has the biggest ratchet handle.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Jet Hot, the most trusted name in exhaust coatings for over 30 years.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from John Sailback from Bel Air, Maryland, and his project is a little different than what we've shown before. He picked up a 2002 Chevy Tahoe, what he calls a soccer mom special. But instead of slamming it down on the ground like most of the guys do with those, he decided to turn it into an expedition off-road exploration vehicle. Check this out. Now, the first thing he did was lift the vehicle about 2 inches front and rear, and he fitted it with American racing wheels and off-road tires. And then to make sure he could survive in the wild, he put on a heavy-duty rear bumper and swing-away rear tire, and jerry cans were added to match the front bumper and the winch. A roof rack holds off-road lights as well as an axe and shovel, and a safari snorkel keeps airflow into the engine when the water gets too deep. Yeah, look at this picture, man. He actually takes this thing into deep water. He uses this. He says he might have taken my advice to get out there and work on something a little too literally. No, John, you did it just right, man. Awesome project. And to recognize that, we hooked up with our buddies at Jet Hot, and we're going to give you $500 worth of high-temperature coating. Also, we're going to give you one of our project planning books so you can keep track of everything that you did on that project. We're also going to give you a Gearz t-shirt because you're obviously a gearhead, and we're going to give you an O'Reilly gift card to help offset some of the costs you may have put into that truck. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this, get your project featured on the show, you got to go to our website, go to Gearz Nation, and click on What Are You Working On and submit your project. The website's also the place to find out more information on any products you may have seen on the show, any Gearz merchandise, and how to join Gearz Nation so you can stream any of our episodes commercial-free. Finally, don't forget to like us on Facebook so you can get some behind-the-scenes footage of our weekly web series, Shifting Gears. That is all we have time for today. Obviously, I've got some time to spend on the Camaro, truing up the sheet metal. John's going to go out and do some four-wheeling, and you need to get out there and start working on something so you can get in on this. We'll see you next time.